What's good, everybody? So I just finished watching You Season 2.
If he loves you, that's the most dangerous thing.
First thing I'm going to say is that You Season 1 I thought was really, really great. So my expectation for the Season 2 was that it probably wasn't going to be that good. Little did I know that both seasons were based off books. This one being the continuation of the first book, and it was called Hidden Bodies. So that's always a good sign whenever it's based off something that's already written. That means that they had a pathway. Sometimes with adaptions, you know, looking at like Game of Thrones and stuff, they don't really know where to go sometimes when they go off book. So luckily this season was on book, and I really like the plot of this season. This season's plot was very similar to the first season. It helped sort of bring more context to things that happened in the first season. We got to know a little bit more about Candace. We got to see a little bit more about Joe's character. We got to see some Dr. Nikki stuff towards the end. Right in episode 2, I saw Chris D'Elia at the airport, and I was hoping that there'd be more of him. Little did I know he'd be playing a pedophile, so that's kind of weird. But it was really good. I really think it was really brave of him for even doing this part. He doesn't really act too much in many movies. He's a really great comedian, and he's super funny. So for him to play a character that's similar to himself, but with a darker side, I think that was really cool, really great. It's a great step forward. It's hard sometimes to see people you sort of know on that basis because, you know, I'm familiar with him from the podcast and stuff. It's hard to see them and take them serious, but he did a really great job. He didn't overplay it, even though he's like such a great big character in real life. He played a more toned down version of himself throughout this, and yeah, it was cool. I really liked his portrayal of this comedian who needs redemption but is also troubled. Throughout this season, we get to see a lot of these arcs that deal with sort of the duality of being, you know, a good person that has done a bad thing or has fallen down a bad path. Can there ever be true redemption for these people, or are they damaged people? So that's really a great topic throughout this season. Joe is somebody who feels like he's sort of misunderstood and can't be redeemed, and he's really just trying to run away from his old self and get away, and Candace follows him. Candace is a character that I feel like we grow to sort of hate her just because Joe hates her, and she's sort of like really just bad for the entire story because she's kind of ruining his bubble, and it adds to sort of the suspense and the claustrophobia of the situation that Joe is in. Throughout this season, I feel like Joe's admiration with Love, or his love with Love, is actually even stronger than it was in the first season with Beck. I found myself kind of thinking about Beck like, hey, that was kind of a fling. Like, that didn't really mean anything, which was really good for this story because I remember being super entranced in the first season with Beck and like her whole story and feeling like they were supposed to be the one. Something I really liked about this show was they really bring you into the characters, and we get like the interior monologue of Joe, and we get to know like what he thinks about these characters, and we get to see how his perception changes. He always has this like sort of snobby look on people and like what they do with social media and like how they portray their lives as sort of being fake or like inauthentic. And in this one, you know, he's sort of not necessarily proven wrong, but he's shown different sides of these people, and he realizes, you know, this is just the way people portray themselves, but there is deeperness into them if you get to know them. So dealing with like the whole superficiality of LA, I feel like this show does a really good job of commenting on LA and the different type of characters, but also like showing you a different side and teaching you about the city, which I found really interesting. It showed you about sort of the social hierarchy of like the groups and the group dynamic of like meeting people out in the city and like, you know, like who you want to be around, who you don't want to be around, and things like that, like the party scene and everything. I was kind of afraid going into this season thinking that maybe they were just going to try to like coast off of like their first season success and not really have like a real story, something like 13 Reasons did. But luckily this was based off a book, so they had this sequel book that was called Hidden Bodies, and with that they had an actual story that continued throughout this. So that was really good. I found this story to actually be very compelling, maybe even more so than the first season. So I think that's a success. I really hope that if they do decide to do a third season, that it's as well thought out as these first two seasons. I hope that they don't just try to make one just because of the popularity, that they take their time and have a real story, because I really enjoy this story. I feel for it. In a way, it could get kind of repetitive seeing this guy fall in and out of love and kind of do this whole repetition where he doesn't necessarily grow. He sort of learns, but he doesn't necessarily grow too much. Throughout this second season, we got to see him grow into basically accepting himself and realizing that everybody has a past and is damaged, and luckily him finding another serial killer that has about as much dirt as he does allows him to realize he's not alone, and that in a city full of the damaged people, he's just one of a million. This show to me is very funny in almost social satirical way. Like, we get to see his thoughts on people and we get to see how they think, and I feel like every character in this story is very smart. Like, they're very smart, even down to 40, who creates this whole like retreat plan in order to do drugs and write his script, and just some of the commentary on the figures around them that they're trying to impress or get with. Whoever's adapting this is doing it really well. From the beginning of the show, I always felt like, what if he met another serial killer and they fell in love? How would that go? So I felt like the way that they went about doing it was really good. It felt very like natural, the way it creeped into it and the way that the story revealed itself. So I like the way they did it. I'm interested to see how they would do season 3. I feel like a lot of it would have to do with her being over his shoulder and challenging him, and maybe infidelity or just more situations with the kid. This is sort of taking off where Dexter left off, but also introducing some more like updated principles and updated scenarios. So yeah, that's my play on it. I'm gonna give this season 2 of You 10 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I don't really see anything more that they really could have done with this season. I feel like everything was on point, from the cinematography to like the dialogue to the story and the way that they structured each episode. I really liked it. I really enjoyed all the twists of it. I can't see anything more they could have really done. I know there's a lot of people that probably feel type weird about watching this because it is sort of a toxic show when you get into the mind of somebody who abuses women and like is very possessive and stuff. I feel like the show comments on it, and I don't know if it's really that deep. I feel like at times it wants to dig into that conversation, but at times it really just wants to be this sort of sensational like romance thriller. So I choose to not really look too deep into that. I feel like if it went any more into that subject, it probably would have became too preachy and would have taken me out of just the show and the romance element and become something that's really trying to impart like on the audience that these things are good or bad. I feel like obviously all these characters know that what they're doing is wrong. They just sort of fall into these traps of making mistakes. So they're flawed characters. Will they ever get what they got coming to them? Who knows? And that's for the writers to write. One thing I like about this show and why I feel like it's super highly regarded for me is that I don't really know where the writers are going. I don't know where the story is deciding to go. So I'm just along for the ride. And whenever a show or a movie could take me on that journey where I'm not really sure where it's going, but I'm enjoying it, I feel like it's some really good writing, you know? I feel like I'm along for the ride and it's not something that I could predict. I enjoy it. So yeah. There you go. You season 2. If you haven't checked it out, start now. Really great. And yeah, you probably should have watched it before I spoiled it all. But yeah, there you go. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you thought about this season and the first season. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What do you think? Do you think it's toxic? I mean, I feel like 2020 we get into the toxic era, so I feel like it's just on time for where we're at right now.